Joel Osteen went from behind-the-scenes TV producer to leading the largest church in America, with millions tuning in worldwide. But beneath his polished smile and uplifting messages lies a deeper tension. Massive wealth, shrinking attendance, and fierce criticism are casting shadows over his once unshakable ministry. How does a pastor preaching hope and prosperity face such scrutiny? And can his message of blessing withstand growing doubts about where the money goes, what is preached, and how his church responds to crisis? Joel Osteen's path to becoming one of America's most recognized pastors was anything but straightforward. Born in Houston in 1963, he grew up surrounded by faith but remained largely behind the scenes, reluctant to step into the spotlight. While his siblings preached or served in the church, Joel focused on supporting roles, particularly in media production. For years, he worked as the television director and producer for Lakewood Church, shaping its broadcasts with Hollywood-level polish, but never once stepping behind a pulpit to preach himself. That all changed unexpectedly in January 1999. At 35 years old, Joel delivered his very first sermon just days before his father, John Osteen, passed away suddenly. In an instant, he was thrust into the leadership of a church with just 6,000 members. He openly admitted feeling unprepared and uncertain, yet stepped up out of sheer necessity. Many doubted his ability, pointing to his lack of formal theological training and any real preaching experience. Yet almost immediately, something shifted inside both the man and the ministry. Over the next 5 years, Joel's leadership transformed Lakewood into the largest church in America. Attendance soared from a modest 8,000 to nearly 30,000 weekly attendees. This rapid growth was not accidental. It was fueled by a massive investment in television airtime, billboards, and media outreach. Joel doubled the church's advertising budget and bought premium time slots in major cities to extend his reach far beyond Houston. He understood early on that the power of media would be the key to expanding his influence on a national and eventually global scale. Central to this transformation was Joel's preaching style. Simple, hopeful, and uplifting. His sermons did not focus on complex doctrine but instead on encouragement and positive thinking. People connected deeply with his message of hope and believed in his promise that better days were always ahead. Rather than preaching fire and brimstone, he offered a gentler, more accessible form of Christianity. This approach won over millions who found genuine solace and renewed strength in his words. As attendance continued to swell, the 8,000-seat sanctuary that had once seemed so large was now bursting at the seams. Joel then presented a bold and ambitious plan to deliver weekly sermons to 100,000 listeners. Most people considered it an unrealistic, even outlandish goal. But Lakewood shocked the nation with its decision to lease the Compaq Center, a former NBA arena right in the heart of Houston. The church acquired that 16,000-seat sports facility and began the extraordinary process of transforming it into a new house of worship, a move that represented a fundamental shift in the way Americans understood religious practice. Lakewood poured nearly $100 million into the complete renovation of the arena. Workers demolished the entire interior structure and rebuilt it from the ground up, constructing a stunning 3-level worship space complete with indoor waterfalls, plush carpets, state-of-the-art broadcast studios, and dedicated classrooms. What had once been a roaring basketball arena was reborn as a cathedral of modern faith. When the church launched its magnificent new facility in 2005, every one of the 16,000 seats was filled with worshipers who had come to witness history, while countless more watched the live event online from all corners of the world. At that moment, Lakewood was operating as something far greater than a local church. It had built itself into a full-scale media empire, reaching 10 million viewers through television programs that broadcasted across more than 100 nations. Joel's charismatic style, combined with the consistently high production quality of his shows, created a dramatic increase in his audience reach. He had developed a unique method of engaging with people who would never set foot inside a church building, delivering faith-based material wrapped in motivational content that resonated with viewers of all backgrounds and beliefs. Behind every towering success, however, lies the delicate balance of faith and business, hope and skepticism. As Joel Osteen's influence continued to swell, so too did the tensions quietly building beneath its shining surface. Joel Osteen understood early on that faith alone would not build a nationwide following. Media was the engine that could drive his message into millions of homes across America and around the world. Starting in the early 1980s, he helped launch Lakewood's television ministry, initially broadcasting to a modest local audience in the Houston area. Over nearly 2 decades behind the camera, he produced thousands of hours of content and steadily lifted Lakewood's media presence from a single local channel to national and international platforms. His goal was always crystal clear: make the church look as polished and professional as any entertainment show on television. By the mid-2000s, Lakewood's broadcast had reached a staggering 92% of American households. 10 million Americans tuned in each and every week, and countless others across the globe joined in through satellite signals and online streams. This massive reach turned Joel into one of the most watched pastors on the planet, and made Lakewood a household name for modern Christianity. But the broadcast ministry had grown into something far beyond weekly sermons. It had become a full-blown multimedia juggernaut. Books played a crucial role in amplifying Joel's reach shortly after his public breakthrough. His 2004 release, Your Best Life Now, became a genuine cultural phenomenon, selling over 4 million copies worldwide and remaining on the New York Times bestseller list for nearly 4 consecutive years. The book's simple motivational style blended faith with practical self-help advice, broadening Joel's appeal far beyond traditional churchgoers to secular audiences who were hungry for hope and personal growth. This overwhelming success catapulted him virtually overnight from local pastor to author celebrity on a national stage. Joel did not stop with one book. He went on to author over 15 titles, with more than half of them becoming national bestsellers in their own right. His 2005 book, Become a Better You, earned him an estimated $13 million in royalties alone. Alongside his publishing success, his live events flourished into large-scale productions, selling out arenas in major cities across the United States and overseas, laying the groundwork for what would eventually become the celebrated Night of Hope tour. The Night of Hope events established entirely new ways for people to experience faith. They transformed what had once been simple church gatherings into full-scale concert experiences, featuring dramatic lighting displays, powerful music performances, and deeply engaged audiences. Tickets were made affordable at approximately $15 each, yet events still drew crowds of more than 60,000 people across cities like Miami, New York, Los Angeles, and London. Production budgets climbed into the millions, but the extraordinary attendance figures and the emotional impact on audiences proved that every dollar spent was fully justified. The events created an entirely new kind of experience, one that blended religious worship with the energy and excitement of live entertainment, and in doing so, cemented Joel's unique performance style in the public consciousness. Through social media platforms, Joel gained access to even broader audiences without any geographic boundaries. His Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram accounts attracted millions of followers who were able to connect with him directly and instantly from any location on Earth. The church's growing online presence opened up entirely new revenue streams, including sponsorship deals, advertising revenue, and merchandise sales through both physical and online stores. Lakewood's brand identity expanded far beyond traditional church services, reaching into every corner of the digital world and the global online marketplace. Through carefully chosen appearances on mainstream media programs such as The Oprah Winfrey Show, Larry King Live, and Good Morning America, Joel reached vast audiences who would never have tuned into Christian television programming on their own. These high-profile public appearances allowed him to establish himself not merely as a pastor but as a motivational speaker and thought leader, someone who spread messages of hope and positivity that transcended traditional religious boundaries. His precisely delivered message earned enthusiastic praise from his supporters while simultaneously drawing pointed criticism and skepticism from his detractors. No empire, no matter how carefully and brilliantly crafted, can escape scrutiny forever. The seeds of tension were quietly being sown even as Joel's message and methods continued reaching the masses in ever-growing numbers. Joel Osteen's preaching centers on a message of hope, personal empowerment, and prosperity, ideas deeply rooted in the prosperity gospel tradition. At its very core, this teaching promises that genuine faith combined with positive confession will lead believers to health, wealth, and lasting happiness. Joel tells his followers that God's will is for them to live completely free of debt, enjoy vibrant good health, and experience abundant blessings in every area of their lives. This powerfully uplifting message has drawn millions of people who are actively seeking encouragement and practical, tangible hope for their everyday lives. Unlike traditional Christian preaching, which tends to focus heavily on sin, repentance, and sacrifice, Joel's sermons place their emphasis squarely on self-belief and trusting God's plan for personal success. His style is conversational and motivational rather than theological or doctrinal in nature. He frequently steers away from difficult topics like judgment, hell, or the necessity of repentance, omissions that critics argue significantly water down the authentic Christian gospel. In their place, he preaches what many have come to call a happy life gospel, one that feels refreshingly accessible to people from all walks of life and all religious backgrounds. Critics, however, argue that this approach dangerously reduces faith to a simple transactional formula. Believe the right things, speak the right words, and material blessings will follow. Many serious theologians warn that prosperity teaching fundamentally distorts biblical truth and encourages a deep self-centeredness rather than genuine discipleship and service to others. They caution that it can foster a troubling sense of entitlement among believers, and even worse, subtly blame people for their own hardships by implying that failure to prosper is simply evidence of insufficient faith. Joel's own public statements have consistently reflected this mindset. He has said that God's will for every believer is to be healthy and completely debt-free throughout their entire lives. To his devoted followers, this bold promise offers real and sustaining hope during genuinely difficult times. But to his detractors, it paints a dangerously unrealistic and potentially harmful picture of what Christian faith actually means, one that conveniently dismisses suffering and ignores the complex, often painful realities of human life. The controversy surrounding prosperity theology is by no means new, but it has grown significantly more intense given the enormous size of Joel's platform and his global reach. The message Joel delivers extends well beyond conventional religious teaching to connect with broader cultural audiences. His positive and practical guidance has made his methods appealing to people who would never consider themselves traditionally religious. His books and speeches function far more like self-help materials than religious texts, attracting readers who are searching for inspiration and personal direction rather than doctrinal instruction or church membership. This extraordinarily broad appeal has enabled him to build one of the largest and most influential religious movements in the world today. Critics have labeled this approach cotton candy gospel, messaging that feels sweet and comforting going down but ultimately provides little real spiritual nourishment or lasting life transformation. Professor Michael Horton and other prominent critics have gone so far as to identify it as outright heresy, arguing that consistently bypassing the concept of repentance will inevitably result in people developing both moral weaknesses and dangerously superficial religious beliefs. A serious theological examination of Joel's extraordinary success reveals a profound spiritual tension that runs quietly through everything he does and says. The prosperity message Joel champions is also a reflection of powerful broader societal movements, cultural forces that celebrate maintaining an uplifting and optimistic outlook while pursuing financial independence and ambitious personal goals. His teachings mirror these cultural desires with remarkable precision, yet in doing so, they create a genuinely difficult dilemma about whether churches should adapt themselves to follow prevailing social trends or hold firmly to foundational spiritual convictions regardless of their cultural popularity. Many serious voices within Christianity argue passionately that the latter must always come first. The sweeping popularity of Joel's media empire may dazzle and inspire millions, but it also risks obscuring the deeper, more uncomfortable debates about faith, wealth, and the true purpose of ministry that quietly and persistently shape his lasting legacy. Lakewood Church operates on an estimated annual budget of $90 million, a staggering sum that firmly positions it among the wealthiest religious organizations anywhere in the United States. Yet a closer and more careful look at how those funds are actually allocated reveals striking imbalances that raise serious eyebrows among financial analysts, journalists, and concerned churchgoers alike. Only about 1.3% of the total budget, roughly $1.2 million, is dedicated to missions and outreach programs specifically designed to help the poor and the vulnerable. This leaves the overwhelming majority of resources funneled into weekly services, media production, administrative overhead, and elaborate large-scale events like Joel Osteen's Night of Hope tours. Joel himself has not drawn a salary from the church since 2004. The bulk of his considerable personal wealth instead flows from book royalties, lucrative speaking engagements, and a sprawling merchandise business tied directly to the Lakewood brand. With net worth estimates ranging anywhere from $40 to $60 million, he resides in a $10.5 million mansion in Houston and also owns a second home valued at approximately $3 million. These financial realities frequently clash with the image of pastoral humility that many Americans still expect from their church leaders, fueling deep and persistent skepticism about exactly how money flows through and out of the Lakewood organization. Critics argue that Lakewood's spending patterns paint a revealing picture of a church far more focused on brand building and expanding media influence than on genuine charity work or authentic spiritual care for the vulnerable. The glossy productions and massive large-scale events consume enormous resources, potentially diverting funds away from more meaningful and impactful ministry work in local communities. This openly commercial approach to running a faith ministry raises profoundly difficult questions about institutional priorities and what the true mission of such an enormously powerful church organization should actually look like. The church's vast media ministry is itself one of the single largest expenditures in the entire budget. By 2017, Lakewood was spending approximately $25 million every year on television broadcasts alone, a figure that critics argue could instead fund countless charitable initiatives serving thousands of people in genuine need. Yet the relentless expansion of the media footprint continues to generate tremendous revenue and unmatched visibility, feeding a self-reinforcing cycle in which growth simply begets more growth. This fundamental tension between ministry calling and financial ambition sits squarely at the heart of the ongoing public debate about megachurches like Lakewood and what they ultimately represent. The costs of security personnel, administrative staff salaries, and the general operational demands of running such an enormous establishment create a substantial financial burden that is difficult to fully appreciate from the outside. The organizational requirements of the church expand inevitably with its growing size, but the actual expenses being incurred must always be honestly evaluated against the core mission of helping those in genuine need and guiding those who have lost their way. The limited financial transparency that most religious organizations maintain throughout the United States only deepens the doubts of critics and erodes the confidence of members who want to trust that their donations are being used responsibly and compassionately. Lakewood does make some financial information available to the public, but the reports that exist tend to reinforce the impression that media production and large-scale events account for the overwhelming majority of the church's spending activity. Many donors have expressed genuine concern that their contributions are going toward sustaining a megachurch media empire and supporting the celebrity status of its pastor, rather than reaching the people who truly need help the most. The organization faces a real and pressing challenge: finding meaningful ways to manage its considerable operational expenses while simultaneously achieving the kind of effective community outreach that satisfies both its religious calling and its moral obligations to society. Joel Osteen's ministry model creates a genuinely complex situation that vividly illustrates how faith, fame, and financial power inevitably intersect in the modern world. The organization generates significant revenue through its worldwide audience of millions, but this very expansion raises increasingly pointed questions about whether it is managing its resources in a manner consistent with its stated values and spiritual mission. Supporters see Osteen's remarkable achievements as clear proof that he successfully delivers messages of hope and transformation to a desperately needy world. Critics, however, see his success as a cautionary tale about the very real and very dangerous pitfalls that arise when prosperity gospel teaching meets institutional ambition and unlimited media reach. This financial imbalance sets the stage for deeper accusations and increasingly vocal public backlash revolving around the urgent issues of transparency, accountability, and the very heart and soul of what Christian ministry is truly meant to be. Lakewood Church and Joel Osteen have weathered numerous serious public controversies over the years, each one casting new and damaging shadows over their carefully polished and gleaming image. Perhaps the most explosive and widely covered moment came during the COVID-19 pandemic, when Lakewood accepted a $4.4 million loan from the Federal Paycheck Protection Program, a relief fund that was originally created and explicitly intended to save struggling small businesses from permanent closure. At the time of the application, Lakewood was operating on an annual budget of $90 million, and Joel's personal wealth was well established in the tens of millions. Unsurprisingly, this led enormous numbers of people to loudly and angrily question why the church felt it needed or deserved such government assistance. Although the church eventually returned the loan after the public backlash became impossible to ignore, the episode sparked widespread and lasting outrage and ignited a fierce national conversation about the financial accountability of wealthy religious institutions. Critics argued forcefully and persuasively that large and enormously wealthy churches like Lakewood had absolutely no business tapping into emergency public funds that had been created for businesses and charities genuinely facing existential financial crisis. The incident deepened existing suspicions about how churches in general manage their money and, perhaps more importantly, whom those institutions truly exist to serve. Lakewood's charitable spending also came under intense scrutiny during this period. With just over 1% of the church's annual budget going toward missions and community outreach, many observers seriously doubted whether the church's financial priorities in any way reflected the core Christian teachings of compassion, generosity, and humble service to others. For a growing number of critics and commentators, this stark reality reinforced a damaging and deeply troubling narrative that Lakewood had gradually transformed from a genuine ministry into a slickly operated media empire, one that paid little more than lip service to its responsibilities toward the poor and the vulnerable. Another major and deeply damaging controversy erupted after Hurricane Harvey devastated Houston in the summer of 2017. While businesses, community organizations, and private citizens across the city scrambled to open their doors and provide emergency shelter to thousands of displaced residents, Lakewood initially kept its massive 16,000-seat sanctuary firmly closed. Church officials cited flooding as their official reason for remaining closed, but local residents were quick to notice that the roads surrounding the church appeared dry and fully passable. Outrage exploded across social media platforms, with protesters pushing hashtags like Open Lakewood Church directly into national trending conversations and demanding that the church immediately open its enormous facility to those who needed refuge. Celebrities and high-profile public figures amplified the backlash even further, intensifying the pressure on Osteen and his leadership team to act. Eventually, Lakewood opened its doors, but only several days after the hurricane had first struck, and by then, the reputational damage had already been done. For many Americans, this deeply troubling episode permanently crystallized a disturbing image of disconnection between the church's vast resources and its actual willingness to serve its community in a genuine moment of crisis and desperate human need. When Hurricane Beryl struck Texas in 2025, Lakewood did respond more tangibly, distributing tens of thousands of water bottles and food boxes to affected residents. However, Joel's initial public reaction was to ask his 6 million Twitter followers to pray for those who had been impacted by the disaster. Critics and local residents, while acknowledging the genuine importance of prayer within faith communities, argued strongly and openly that prayer alone was a wholly insufficient first response from an institution with the financial and logistical resources that Lakewood clearly possessed. The calls across social media for immediate, concrete, physical action rather than thoughts and prayers grew louder and more persistent with every passing hour. Then came an event that shook the church and the nation in ways that no hurricane could. After a shooting incident in 2024 that shocked the entire community, Lakewood's internal safety procedures were subjected to intense and uncomfortable scrutiny that went far beyond the realm of natural disaster response. A woman armed with multiple rifles entered the building and opened fire, injuring several individuals. The investigation that followed revealed a deeply troubling reality. The shooter had been able to gain entry to the building with alarming ease, moving past both security personnel and off-duty police officers without being stopped or even meaningfully challenged. The violent event forced an uncomfortable and long-overdue examination of how a church with the extensive resources and the enormous membership base that Lakewood possesses could have failed so completely to protect its own people from deadly harm. The shooting initiated formal investigations and triggered fresh and urgent public debates about gun control legislation, mental health resources and funding, and the specific responsibilities of large institutions to protect the communities they serve. Joel's response, in which he called on his followers to maintain their faith and to continue praying, provided genuine comfort to some members of the congregation, while others argued loudly and publicly that his words were a wholly inadequate substitute for the genuine systemic changes that this tragedy so clearly demanded. The church's vast wealth and its towering media presence may continue to dazzle and inspire millions of devoted followers around the world, but the accumulation of these controversies tells a far more complicated and troubling story about what truly lies beneath the polished and gleaming surface of one of America's most recognizable religious institutions. Joel Osteen's remarkable rise to prominence and his enduring influence over tens of millions of people cannot be fully or fairly understood without recognizing the absolutely central role his immediate family has played in shaping both the identity and the ongoing operations of Lakewood Church. His wife Victoria, whom Joel first met during a completely ordinary errand to replace a watch battery, has evolved into a genuinely powerful and influential public figure in her own right. Coming from a background uniquely shaped by both faith and science, her father worked as a NASA engineer while her mother devoted herself to teaching Sunday school. Victoria launched the church's dedicated women's ministry program in 2003. Since that founding, the program has grown into a thriving and deeply impactful initiative that reaches thousands of women every single year, providing vital spiritual support and a genuine sense of community and belonging. Victoria's commanding presence on stage and in organizational leadership beautifully complements Joel's own public role, as she connects with audiences through an authentic personal warmth and a naturally engaging motivational speaking style that is entirely her own. She has also carved out a significant identity as a best-selling author, with her 2008 book Love Your Life selling an impressive 750,000 copies in its very first print run and debuting at number 2 on the New York Times bestseller list. Her remarkable personal journey, from working in retail to becoming a nationally recognized ministry figure, powerfully embodies the very blend of boldness, compassion, and determined faith that defines Lakewood's broader approach to reaching and serving people. Their remarkable partnership forms the deep and enduring backbone of what has become an enormously influential religious dynasty, one that now extends meaningfully to their 2 children, Jonathan and Alexandra. Both young people were raised under the intense and unrelenting spotlight of Lakewood's public life, and both have gone on to forge their own distinct individual paths while maintaining deep and meaningful connections to the church and its mission. Jonathan, born in 1995, pursued formal studies in radio, television, and film, and while still a teenager began leading worship services and producing original music for Lakewood's thriving young adults ministry. His sermon debut on Father's Day in 2019 carried profound symbolic weight, representing the deliberate and meaningful passing of spiritual leadership to a new and rising generation of the Osteen family. Alexandra, born in 1998, has established herself as the lead vocalist of Lakewood's acclaimed worship band, LYA. Her original songs reach hundreds of thousands of listeners on platforms like Spotify, blending contemporary musical styles with the church's core message in ways that feel fresh, authentic, and genuinely moving. Her confident stage presence and deeply heartfelt lyrics contribute meaningfully to the evolving cultural appeal that Lakewood works continuously to maintain within an increasingly competitive and fragmented religious landscape. Together, Jonathan and Alexandra represent what appears to be a carefully and deliberately cultivated plan for generational legacy building and continued growth within the family ministry model their parents have so successfully established. The success of Lakewood as a family-operated institution brings genuine advantages, but also creates real and significant difficulties. Chief among these are growing concerns about dynastic leadership structures and the increasingly concentrated distribution of religious power and institutional authority within a single family unit. While the family-based leadership approach undeniably promotes internal teamwork and organizational stability, it also creates inherent tensions when individual leaders must balance deeply personal objectives and family interests against their stated dedication to the broader congregation's collective purpose. Critics have not been shy about voicing the concern that Lakewood increasingly resembles an insular and self-perpetuating dynasty, one more concerned with preserving and expanding its own influence and institutional power than with authentically and sacrificially serving its surrounding community. Joel's preaching methodology differs notably and significantly from that of his father, John Osteen, who developed his own distinctive preaching style through years of rigorous and deep theological study. John devoted himself wholeheartedly to teaching the Bible and practicing a deeply rooted charismatic Christianity. Joel, by contrast, delivers his content through carefully memorized and precisely timed segments, a disciplined approach developed specifically to match the strict time constraints of television broadcasting. This entertainment-oriented presentation style presents a genuine and growing challenge for traditional pastors, who harbor legitimate concerns that the desire to impress and entertain audiences may gradually displace the more essential and enduring elements of authentic ministry work. Through both strong and weak seasons, through controversy and celebration, the Osteen family has consistently maintained its firm grip on Lakewood Church's direction and public identity throughout the institution's extraordinary transformation into one of the world's most recognized megachurch operations. Their demonstrable ability to create compelling media content and skillfully manage their collective public image has kept Lakewood prominently visible in the public eye even as broader religious trends have shifted dramatically around them. Yet that same intense public visibility inevitably invites ongoing and searching scrutiny regarding their true intentions, their personal motivations, and the ultimate stewardship of the vast resources their congregation entrusts to them. No institution, however large or successful or well-resourced, can fully shield itself from the vulnerabilities inherent in its own leadership, especially when the physical security and personal safety of thousands of worshippers become a paramount and urgent concern. The tragic shooting at Lakewood Church in February 2024 served as a stark, heartbreaking, and deeply sobering reminder of the very real vulnerabilities that exist even within the largest and seemingly most secure religious institutions in the country. A woman armed with multiple rifles walked calmly and without meaningful challenge past unarmed security personnel and off-duty police officers stationed throughout the building, before opening fire in a crowded hallway filled with unsuspecting worshippers. The resulting chaos left a 47-year-old man seriously injured and, in a detail that shocked